It's a very good evening and welcome to it. It's our Thursday edition of ZiFM Sport, and keeping true to our traditions, we keep it short, sharp and sweet. In the studio, as it were, Barry Manandi, Christine Midzi, and myself, Mike Madonna. Behind the desk is Sean Tafarinyika, our producer. Don't forget, you can always follow and interact with us on Twitter and Facebook at ZiFM Sport. Alternatively, simply search for the presenters in their individual capacities. You'll find us right there waiting for you to discuss all matters out of the world of sport. Now, the wait is finally over. What used to be golf's last major of the year now becomes its first. In fact, it's been 13 months since a major championship was contested at the 2019 Open Championship at Royal Portrush. And this evening, we're taking a look at the PGA Championship, which is set to tee off at TPC Harding Park.
Hi, this is Sikandar Raza from Zimbabwe Cricket Team, and you're watching me on ZiFM Sports.
Right, the US PGA Championship at TPC Harding Park marks the first PGA Championship to be ever played in San Francisco, the first major in the Bay Area since the 2012 US Open at Olympic Club. Along with its West Coast location, the tournament will have a different feel without any fans on site. The field of 156 players will feature 48 of the top 50 players in the world rankings, including all of the top 10. That list includes newly minted world number one Justin Thomas, who overtook John Rahm at the top spot following his win at last week's WGC FedEx St. Jude Invitational. Now, before we get into it, let's hear the thoughts of our very own Mark Pozzo, who gives us his thoughts on what we can expect from the PGA Championship this weekend.
It's going to be relatively cold. Damp conditions are forecast for the event over the 4 days in San Francisco. And I think it's going to be a test for all golfers. The rough is up and fairways are much more narrow than before, having had some alterations done to the course. Now, since this major became a 72-hole stroke play event back in 1958, there have been no British winners, with only Northern Ireland's Rory McIlroy providing UK joy. He needs fans as he thrives on the support on the course. And there have been just two other European winners, Irishman Padraig Harrington in 2008 and Germany's Martin Keimer in 2010. To the Americans, and Justin Thomas has just knocked Spaniard John Rahm from the world number one spot, and US players occupy 10 of the top 15 places in the current world rankings. Let's have a look at some of those British players that could surprise. Tyrrell Hatton, he had a disappointing showing at the WGC St. Jude Invitational in Memphis, while Matthew Fitzpatrick is another Englishman with eye-catching form, having been third at the Jack Nicklaus Memorial Tournament and then sixth in the World Golf Championship event. Another young player that I do like is Tom Lewis. He made a spectacular showing in Memphis, where he shared second place behind champion Thomas after weekend rounds of 61 and 66 at TPC Southwind. Those two rounds are very, very encouraging indeed. Then there's Matt Wallace. He showed his liking for tough major setups, finishing third in that championship 14 months ago, fourth place at the Memorial last month in his most encouraging results since lockdown. With 10 professional victories, 4 of them on the European Tour, the 30-year-old is renowned for capitalizing on winning positions, but this is a big step going into a golf major. Tommy Fleetwood, one of my all-time favorites, has not fired in the 2 tournaments he's completed since lockdown, despite remaining a world-class talent. The same can be said of Justin Rose. Having just turned 40, he's hit his worst slump for a decade, having not won in 18 months. So for me, I think the first major will be dominated by the Americans. Just some interesting T groups going off on the first day today. Daniel Berger, Xander Schauffele and Steve Strickler, Brooks Koepka, Gary Woodland, Shane Lowry all playing together, Jordan Smith, Dustin Johnson and Justin Rose playing together. And then this is a group that I'll certainly be following: Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, and the world number one Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler, Bryson DeChambeau, Adam Scott, and John Rahm, who's just relinquished his number one spot to Justin Thomas. He'll be alongside Phil Mickelson and Sergio Garcia. For me, Justin Thomas goes in on top of his game. Brooks Koepka, though, will be a challenger. He definitely returned to form in Memphis and at last looks a proper threat to win an unprecedented third PGA in a row in the stroke play era. Current form suggests the Europeans' best chance of lifting the Wanamaker Trophy is Jon Rahm, who went to the top of the world rankings with last month's impressive win at the Memorial, but I thought he was disappointing last week. I was impressed with Ricky Fowler, another American that I think if he can recapture last week's form and continue that into this weekend at the PGA Championship, he will be certainly a big challenger. They certainly add to a heady mix for what could prove to be a thrilling shootout involving young and exciting names from both sides of the Atlantic. It's just such a shame there'll be no one there to see it all.
That's our very own Mark Pozzo there speaking, giving his thoughts, a preview of the first major of the year, the US PGA Championship, which is being played at TPC Harding Park out on the West Coast. And I guess, Barry, that's a logical place to begin, isn't it? You know, even as a golfer, and you play a bit, you know, you're not very good, but you do play a bit.
Is that what you call it? If you can call it that.
And,
you can call it play.
One of the things that you do as a golfer, Barry, is that you must have knowledge of the course that you're playing on, because the course itself, more than your competition, the course itself is the challenge when it comes to golf, isn't it? Tell us a bit about TPC Harding Park.
Yeah, TPC Harding Park as a whole. I mean, look, we follow golf quite religiously, and even if you look at the layout in San Francisco, it's surrounded by some phenomenal high-end, some of the most exclusive clubs in America, let alone in California as a province or state, as it were. So it's odd that they chose TPC Harding. Not to say that, look, it's not a challenging course, but they have. And in itself, the challenge mainly comes from the fact that if anyone locally plays at the Ligate, because it's very picturesque, looks phenomenal. It's lined by cypress trees, but it's got very thin fairways, and then also it punishes you when you then go off the fairway because the rough is very thick and moist. So yeah, the pros are going to be challenged. It's going to be a beast, especially at this time of year, albeit that it's round about sort of time of year that would have this anyway. You got 12 par fours, so already to shoot level par, you're going to have to play 12 great par fours and then try to harvest on the par fives and the par threes.
Well, the golf course is no stranger to high-profile events. Harding Park has hosted the WGC Match Play, the WGC American Express, the President's Cup, and numerous Champions Tour events. So there are a number of golfers who are out there who have played there before, who've had a feel of the course, and will not be strangers to the conditions that are going to be thrown up on the West Coast this coming weekend. Now, Chris, let's take a look at the players that we expect to challenge. And the one thing that we have seen in the world of golf since the return without the fans is that the number one ranking has been exchanging hands quite regularly now. You know, one player holding it for 2 weeks, and then a tournament 2 weeks later, another player coming in. We've just seen Justin Rose taking over from Jon Rahm, who took over from Rory McIlroy, who took over from Brooks Koepka. So it shows that there is no player who's really dominant right now on the US PGA Tour or on the PGA Tour as a whole.
So definitely not any consistency in terms of the winners on the tour at the moment. If you take a look at what pundits are, their win pick at the moment, which is Brooks Koepka, it's not hard to pick against Brooks Koepka in the PGA Championship. Over his last six PGAs, he's got 2 wins and 2 additional top 5 finishes, just showing the consistency that he's on. And he also saw an uptick in a lot of other important stats at last week's event, that's including a 10% increase in his greens and regulation stats. So he's definitely primed to win again. Your value pick, Daniel Berger, probably the hottest golfer on the tour for the last 6 months. So he's ripe for a major breakthrough. He's 27 years old and he hasn't fared particularly well in major championships. So if you take a look at him, then that's someone like a green shoot. in the tour at the moment. Your sleeper pick, you probably wouldn't pick this one, Danny Willett. He's the 2016 Masters Championship. He's rejuvenated his career over the last 10 months. And after falling out of the top 400 in the world, he won the BMW PGA Championship in England last fall. And he's risen all the way to inside the top 40. So he's one you can't knock. Semi-finalist at the WGC match play at TPC Harding back in 2015. So if you had a sleeper pick, it would be Danny Willett.
Danny Willett, obviously a player with a lot to prove. Barry fell to as low as 400. He's back in the top 40, and he wants to show that he can mix it with the big boys on the big stage once again. So Chris has gone with Brooks Koepka. Very difficult to argue against Brooks Koepka, especially as far as the PGA Championship is concerned, because I think he's won the last 2 editions, isn't it? And he's looking to make it a hat trick.
Yeah, and in truth, you'd be a very brave man to bet against him. Look, anything can happen, and like you pointed out, the inconsistency on tour in terms of winners is going to probably play in the hands of many of those who like to put a flutter on these sort of things. But Brooks Koepka, I think, is a decent enough pick. He's in very good nick. We saw it last week. His last time out finish, runner-up finish. So consequently, and also, I think his game is very much suited to TPC Harding on the basis that Brooks Koepka can hit it long, but he can hit it very, very straight. So those narrow fairways are going to play into his hands.
Well, that's a point that Brooks Koepka himself makes, because he believes that the big boy golf course at TPC Harding Park is ideally suited to his game as he bids for a 3rd straight PGA Championship victory.
I don't view it as either one. I've already dealt with it at the U.S. Open. Going into Pebble, I feel like I know how to handle it, and I played pretty well there. I just got beat, and my game feels like it's in really, really good shape right now. I like the way I'm hitting it, and got me putting it really, really well. Every day is a lot more comfortable. So I'm excited. This is a big boy golf course. Got to hit the ball straight. Got to put it in the fairway, and it's going to be quite long. So I think it kind of plays in my hands.
Brooks Koepka, their favourite for the USPGA Championship. He has been grouped together with Gary Woodland and Shane Lowry. Just running through the other key groupings, Jordan Spieth is with D-Day, Justin Johnson, as well as Justin Rose. Justin Thomas has been coupled with the big boys, Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. And Ricky Fowler will be with Bryson DeChambeau as well as Adam Scott. John Rahm, the former world number 1, is with lefty Phil Mickelson as well as Sergio Garcia. Now, those groupings are often very key, aren't they, Barry? Because when you take a look at a player like Justin Thomas right now, who's world number 1, he'll go into that grouping with Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. And the 2 things could happen. Either the pressure gets to him. This time, however, I think it's unlikely because there are no fans on the course. So there are no 50, 60, 80,000 people who are following Tiger Woods all over the course. So we can remove that one away. The second thing that could possibly happen is that he ramps up his game and his performance because he feels like he has to prove a point to these 2 players that he's up against. And right now, he's bang on form, having won last week's tournament.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be the latter. I think he's going to rise to the occasion, rise to the level of the grouping he's been placed in. And also he's been placed with 2 very long hitters. Tiger Woods, not as long as he used to be off the tee, but Rory McIlroy, we know, listen, 310, 320 is not even a thing. It's just, he can do that at a doddle. So the minute that you're playing with players like that, various things can happen in golf. Either if you're playing with very good players, your game rises to that level. And sometimes if you're playing with players who are having a shocker, sometimes your game descends to that level. I don't think that neither Tiger Woods nor Rory McIlroy are going to have a shocker. So I suspect that this grouping is going to be one to watch most certainly. And it's even more interesting now that you've got the current world number 1 and then 2 of the biggest brands in golf at the moment, Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy.
And then you've got that grouping, Chris, with Bryson DeChambeau and Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler has never won a major, and it's one of the big surprises in golf that a player who can be consistently so good can consistently fall short come the big moments or the big tournaments in golf. But with the field being so open, we've talked about there being no dominant player. surely it's ripe now for a name like Ricky Fowler or Bryson DeChambeau to ascend to the top of the podium.
Oh, definitely. I think Ricky Fowler, like you said, it's almost awkward that he hasn't won a major yet, and we're just waiting for him. In the group he's been placed in, Scott is still making his first start since the season resumed. He won early this year at the Genesis Invitational down in Southern California. So you've got a group here it's pretty hungry, pretty. They all have something to prove. Bryson DeChambeau, he's revamped his game, takes on a major for the first time. He's a win and 7 other top 10s this season. So these are players who've been consistent. They've been doing the business on the course, but what they need to do now is to be able to actually win. And these are three golfers who definitely need to prove something, I think, especially in this PGA Championship.
Well, one of the groupings certainly has a Spanish flavor. Jon Rahm with a compatriot Sergio Garcia, as well as Phil Mickelson. Jon Rahm was world number 1 before he was dethroned by Justin Thomas. Now, he has praised Thomas for moving back to the top of golf's rankings, but believes it's going to be difficult for any player to dominate the world number 1 position.
Just for the sheer fact that we have way more infrastructure than we're used to every other week, it already feels a little bit different. Major championship weeks, we don't need anything special or spectators to make us aware or make it known that it's a major championship, right? It just feels like it. You're aware of it. It's as simple as that. Obviously, fans and spectators are going to be missed. The atmosphere will not be the same. And I can say from experience, when you're coming down the stretch and you're hitting some shots and you don't know what's going on, you don't know what the people in front of you are doing, you don't know some shots that you hit into the green, you don't know how close they can be. It's very, very out down the stretch, and I think in the major even more when on the back nine on a Sunday you can feel the roars and hear it and just tell what's going on before they post it on the boards, right? So I think that might be a little bit different, but besides that, it's a major championship. It feels like a major championship. It feels like a like a good event. So hopefully I can perform like it.
Jon Rahm there, Barry, says that it'll be difficult for anyone to dominate the world number 1 position, but he's not short of motivation, is he? Having been dethroned by Justin Thomas this past weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And his comments are diametrically opposed to the man who's just claimed the number 1 position, Justin Thomas, who says that he wants to stay there a lot longer. So it's going to be a tough one. I do agree, though, with Jon Rahm. It's not easy to hold on to that number 1 position, especially in this climate, in this environment. A bit like women's tennis, since the Serena age almost came to a controversial end. Controversial in the sense that I hate the fact that it's come to an end. But the fact that there is no dominant golfer at the moment means that we're going to see a lot of switching and changing. You said it earlier in the show. And so I don't think Justin Thomas is going to last very long in that number 1 ranking. Even if he wins the PGA Championship, which he's well capable of doing, I don't think it's going to last very long.
And now, as we wrap up the show, I think there are a lot of people who are listening and thinking, you know what, how can they do an entire preview for a major championship and not even mention Tiger Woods once, apart from listing that he was in a certain grouping? Well, the reason, Chris, I think the fact that Tiger Woods has hardly played in recent weeks, and when he did play, his performances were none too flash, means that surely we can't be discussing him as a contender.
Not necessarily as a contender. I think Tiger Woods is Tiger Woods and he will be discussed. But I think particularly right now where he hasn't played competitive golf, he hasn't played behind closed doors. It's going to be, I think it's going to be different for him. He's used to having those hordes of people following him across the course. And I think it's almost part of his psyche. So we'll see how he does without them. And look, he's Tiger Woods, so you never know what he could pull out of a hat.
Can he win it though? Can he win it though?
It's a no for me.
Can he win it?
It's a no,
it's a no
me.
for you. Exactly. All that, Chris. You got to say he can't win it.
He's so Tiger Woods.
He can't win it.
Tiger Woods. Barry, can Tiger Woods pull a rabbit out of the hat?
No, not at this stage. Maybe next year. I think he's certainly got one in the back pocket, but not this one. I don't think he's got enough minutes or miles on his clock, so I don't think so.
Okay, Chris has already tipped Brooks Koepka. Well, you did say the pundits are picking Brooks Koepka. Is he the guy you're going with?
Definitely Brooks Koepka.
Brooks Koepka, Baz?
I'm gonna say right from left field. Right from left field, here. I'm gonna say Gary Woodland.
Gary Woodland.
Gary
Fantastic.
Woodland.
Gary
Yeah,
Woodland. He's been there or thereabouts. He does 2-3 days of good golf. Can he? I think he might be able to string it together.
Okay, I always go with my heart, and I'll be back in DJ. But I think Brooks Koepka may be the man to do the business. But I'll be back in Dustin Johnson all the way at the US PGA Championship. It's the first major of the year, and it's on at TPC Harding Park.
They go into the PGA Championship, and it's all to play for. Here's Tears for Fears with their track. And if you recall, Nas, the hip-hop artist, said that if I rule the world, well, Tears for Fears says everybody wants to rule the world. That's all for today. May God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manandi, out.